Right now, Minsk is launching a strike. This weapon of Lukashenko is a threat to the entire world. The Russian Federation has gone for it. Kaliningrad has become a nuclear bridgehead. Nato is making an emergency decision. Poland has run out of patience. Denmark is acting preemptively. They are going to war directly against Moscow. The armed forces of Ukraine have launched a mega operation to destroy the Kremlin. All this and more in our episode Hellpoint. Everything was inevitably leading up to this. A nuclear mushroom cloud is visible. Belarus has rolled out a new mega weapon onto the stage. Loud statements, epic footage, and a test of the world's resilience. Everyone is holding their breath. The jaws of the Minsk trap are open wider than ever. However, a new twist has emerged. And just then, Putin's show begins. What deception did the Allies resort to, and why has the threat now grown to unprecedented proportions? More on this in just a moment.
On the final day of the Zapad 2025 exercises, the Russians and Belarusians decided to impress the world with their wonder weapon called saffron. Propaganda media outlets spread the news online that at the Borisovsky training ground north of Minsk, a mobile combat laser system was tested capable of destroying small UAVs at a distance of 1 kilometer. All that is known about it are the parameters announced by the presenter: target engagement time of less than 10 seconds and a crew of 3 people. Back in the summer of 2024, the Russians reported that Russia and Belarus were preparing to test a new combat laser. The Belarusians even made a report from the LEMT Scientific and Technical Center, which has been developing laser technologies since 2023. The designers themselves called their creation a hyperboloid and showed the first assembled prototype.
The system, made at a Belarusian enterprise, can operate in conjunction with various radar systems. The Belarusian system is installed in special containers. The laser is deployed on the platform directly at the moment of use and operates on a pulsed basis. This means that the energy flash can only be detected at the moment of active target engagement. In addition, the entire system can be installed not only in special facilities or underground for camouflage purposes, but also deployed on mobile platforms.
In May of this year, a Belarusian public page that publishes information on military-related topics posted these 2 photographs. One shows a falling drone and the other depicts the so-called combat laser saffron. From this, analysts concluded that the system had been tested. And now it has been announced during large-scale exercises that the so-called Union states are conducting near the borders of NATO countries. Ukrainian analysts have already criticized this show, saying that the Russians were flaunting a prototype in front of observers and participants from other countries. Moreover, as with other so-called unparalleled projects, this weapon is most likely a repackaged Chinese solution known as the Silent Hunter. The most interesting part is that earlier, the Russians did the same thing based on it, only under the name Kochevnik.
At the same time, the most interesting thing is that the Russians themselves admit it. The laser complex shown in the video is a Chinese development called the Low Altitude Laser Defending System, or LAS. The name Silent Hunter also appears online. This is an improved version of the LAS system, with a power of 30 kilowatts, available in both stationary and mobile variants, and is likely developed by the Chinese Academy of Engineering Physics.
Recently, the Kvadrat made an appearance at Zapad 2025. This is a Russian terminal which in Moscow is positioned as an analog to Starlink. This equipment was used to provide communications for units and formations of the regional military grouping. There is no information about it in open sources, but visually it resembles the American system. It is known that Kvadrat is designed for transmitting large volumes of data at the regimental or divisional level, with the ability to use various communication systems, secure email and video conferencing. In addition to Kvadrat, terminals called Sprint were also used during the exercises. They only became known recently at the end of June, when Russian media reported on their delivery to the 20th Combined Arms Army of the Western Grouping. And of course, aside from the new developments for the finale of the exercises, the Russians and Belarusians saved maneuvers involving the infamous Oreshnik.
Among the most significant events are activities such as planning and considering the use of non-strategic nuclear forces, as well as the assessment and deployment of the mobile missile complex Oreshnik. Our esteemed Russian colleagues generously shared their invaluable combat experience with us, which profoundly allows us to confidently say that today our dedicated units are indeed receiving the most modern, the most cutting-edge, and the most advanced information, which They mechanically, automatically implemented into their combat operations.
The Zapad 2025 exercises turned out to be more extensive than analysts had expected. The armies of Belarus and Russia carried out several maneuvers at once and showcased their developments. After several years of informational isolation, Minsk hosted dozens of foreign journalists and delegates. The puppet armies of the dictators enjoyed Saber rattling so much that they promised to repeat it in 2 years.
Shock and fear. Missiles are aimed directly at Europe. The start of World War III from Kaliningrad. The spark of nuclear catastrophe has already ignited. NATO is on alert. A real blaze is unfolding. Ukrainian drones are hinting to Putin that he is trapped. Any move and the response will be deadly. Panic has broken out in the Kremlin. Watch the hottest footage and sensational details right now.
The starting point of Russia's war with NATO will begin in the Kaliningrad region.
Kaliningrad is undoubtedly one of Russia's most important regions, our outpost in the west.
The Kremlin is preparing new provocations. The Russian army has moved Iskanders to NATO's borders. The alliance has declared its readiness to strike Kaliningrad instantly. The Kaliningrad region is the westernmost region of the Russian Federation and is an exclave, completely separated from the main territory of Russia by other countries. The Russians have effectively turned the Kaliningrad region into a military base. The main formations include ground forces, aviation, as well as the largest naval base of the Baltic Fleet.
The Russian enclave has always been militarized. It is located right in the heart of NATO territory between Poland, Lithuania, and the Baltic Sea. The significant meeting near Belarus, with the substantial deployment of tactical nuclear weapons and, in the foreseeable future, a much larger arsenal, clearly indicates that Kaliningrad is progressively becoming a highly militarized and strategically important zone, which consequently creates considerable and undeniable risks for the entire North Atlantic alliance.
Kaliningrad very often becomes the center of Russian saber rattling. In this way, Putin is trying to probe all of NATO's capabilities. For example, during the joint exercises with Belarus, Zapad 2025, the military conducted combat operations on the territory of the Kaliningrad region, after which the Kremlin deployed Iskander missiles there, posing a threat to
the numerical figure, the integer value, the quantity 6, the powerful and unified alliance, countries around the world. This is a significant matter of considerable attention for the General Staff regarding all the member countries.
For Russia, the confrontation with the North Atlantic Alliance, often referred to as NATO, appears, and this crucial aspect must be thoroughly understood, as it represents the next significant stage in preserving the current ruling power, that is to say, the existing Putin regime. The Putin regime cannot exist in a world at peace. It cannot exist under conditions of a truce. As of this very moment, it can unfortunately exist only in a perpetual state of ongoing war.
According to the expert, all provocations by the Russian authorities in the Kaliningrad region at the moment are worthless.
From a military standpoint, Kaliningrad is absolutely not a knife in the back. It is a vulnerable location. Russia will have to actively save Kaliningrad instead of Kaliningrad merely being some kind of a strategic outpost. Bridgehead for carrying out a large-scale operation. Most of the military units in the Kaliningrad region are empty now, since their personnel have been redeployed to Ukraine. Overall, the Kaliningrad region is the Achilles heel of Europe, specifically for the Russian Federation.
Back in July, the NATO allies officially announced the creation of a comprehensive plan to effectively neutralize the Kaliningrad region, which is specifically intended to counter potential threats emanating from Bucharest and to ensure global stability and security.
For example, to deploy, say, approximately 50 advanced Leopard tanks there against a staggering 2,000 to 3,000 Russian drones per day is a significant undertaking. Right now in Ukraine, Russia is using on average 1,500 drones, FPV drones per day. Is NATO ready for that? No.
Right now, Putin needs to demonstrate NATO's inability to resolve such provocative situations. Russia is interested in creating divisions within the alliance, and it needs discord and the undermining of unity in order to provoke a serious crisis in NATO.
Breaking news that has shocked everyone. Poland is reaching for the nuclear button. Russia has gone too far. This weapon will rewrite the entire course of events. It's already time for Putin to pack his bags. Mega weapons are entering the scene. NATO countries are bowing their heads to Ukraine. Now the levers of Europe's military power have new priorities. Nothing else will get through.
The new nuclear axis of Europe. Poland is ready to become a country with its own nuclear shield.
As the President of the Republic of Poland, I believe that Poland should participate in nuclear sharing. It should have its own nuclear, energy, civil and military capabilities.
According to Baltic sources, on this issue Poland is counting on support from France. For Warsaw, this is not just an alliance, but a way to obtain exactly the kind of weapon that will change the rules of the game in Europe. Such a move is a challenge both to Moscow and to Brussels.
This was the statement made by the Polish president. It came soon after the unprecedented Russian drone attack on Poland. And although this time dozens of drones were reconnaissance drones that did not pose a direct military threat, many in Warsaw continue to expect that the attack will be repeated. And next time, they will be strike drones.
To strengthen nuclear cooperation, Poland is preparing to sign the Nansky Agreement, a document intended to deepen collaboration in the fields of defense and security. And although Nawrocki admits that it is still too early to talk about this, his position is clear. Poland intends to participate in nuclear sharing.
The significant fact that the nation of Poland is now seriously beginning to consider its own active participation in potentially receiving tactical nuclear weapons from its Western allies clearly demonstrates the elevated level of profound concern that currently exists within many Central European countries due to the ongoing and deeply troubling Russian-Ukrainian war. And the lack of understanding with Western leaders about how they can actually stop this war in the foreseeable future and counter Russia's ambitions, which are actively supported by Beijing. And there is a growing and profound realization that if Vladimir Putin's relentless desire to continue this protracted war against Ukraine indefinitely is not decisively stopped by concerted Western efforts, and regrettably hopes for Donald Trump here are exceedingly slim, then this devastating conflict will inevitably keep taking on new and increasingly dangerous forms and eventually will undeniably cross Ukraine's sovereign borders, impacting wider regions.
Alarmed by the recent aerial incursion, Poland has quickly begun adopting Ukraine's experience in countering Russian drones. Poland's Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Defense, Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz, arrived in Kiev, along with a delegation from the Ministry of Defense and the country's armed forces. On the agenda are military technical cooperation and further support for Ukraine's defense, as well as the overall security situation in the context of Russian aggression. Warsaw and Kiev also agreed on cooperation in the field of countering drones, exchanging information on air threats, and implementing technology for the operational use of reconnaissance and strike aircraft.
Drones. How will Europe act in the event of a military clash? If Russia, let's say, violates the airspace in a real serious way, then what kind of NATO response forces can be raised? What do they look like? Where and how many of which planes will take off from? That is to clearly understand the framework of response. If Russia is indeed conducting such an analysis at a serious level, then that's a marker. Because it means we really need to prepare for a serious military confrontation between Western and Russian armed forces, regardless of what happens with the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, whether the current situation in Ukraine ends or not.
At the same time, Poland is launching an unprecedented rearmament program. Its expenditures are enormous. This includes combat aircraft and helicopters, a wide range of armored vehicles, tube and rocket artillery systems, modern air defense systems and munitions. At the same time, Warsaw is actively ramping up its own weapons production. In addition, next year Poland has planned a record defense budget of 200 billion zlotys, or about $55 billion, which amounts to approximately 4.8% of GDP. Work is also underway to significantly increase the size of the armed forces from 200,000 to 500,000 personnel. The Polish authorities consistently emphasize that the country will use all available resources to guarantee its own security.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Shock. Denmark is preparing for war against the Russian Federation. The first steps have been taken. Long-range missiles are loaded. Russia has tucked its tail. Something terrible is brewing. It seems someone has been found who will strike at Putin. A fierce blow is ready. The world is holding its breath. Be the first to hear the stunning details.
Denmark will purchase long-range missiles and drones due to the threat from Russia. This was announced by the country's Prime Minister, Mette Frederiksen. Denmark's Defense Minister, Troels Lund Poulsen, noted that with these new assets, the armed forces will be able to actively counter threats far from their own country. According to Poulsen, the experience of the war in Ukraine has shown that it is important not only to build a layered air defense system,
but also to possess the comprehensive capabilities and advanced technological means to effectively strike critical targets situated deep within enemy territory, encompassing a wide array of strategic assets, including mobile and fixed missile launchers, as well as other significant military installations that pose a direct threat, thereby ensuring a robust and credible deterrent posture. The fundamental principle of loyalty in defense, particularly from the United States, with the significant arrival of the Trump White House, turns out not to be quite so after all.
According to the Commander-in-Chief of the Danish Army, General Nikolai Viger's Hildgard, high-precision long-range weapons will allow the military to counter threats before they reach their territory.
The Danes are also interested in acquiring and deploying missile systems with a range of over 600 kilometers. Over 600 kilometers, that is exceeding the range of a short tactical radius of action.
The Russian ambassador to Copenhagen, Vladimir Barbin, immediately responded to Denmark's statement. According to him, no one anywhere in the world has ever even thought of publicly threatening a nuclear power. And now Russia has to proceed from the fact that Denmark is not only considering the possibility of a direct military confrontation with it, but is also preparing for such a scenario.
Russia is demonstrating, and in principle aims to demonstrate, the lack of unity within NATO in the North Atlantic Alliance, to sow discord, to deliberately split and ultimately destroy the entire European security system among the various member states of the alliance. They are succeeding in this. They manage to do it easily in ways that seem simple at first glance. We're proving Russia's direct and undeniable guilt, if one chooses not to truly see it, is very difficult indeed. Nevertheless, many Europeans already clearly see the aggressive nature of the Russian Federation and have not yet fully accepted the undeniable fact that a war with Russia, if not entirely inevitable, is highly likely to occur, and moreover, in the very near future.
Prime Minister Frederiksen responded to the statements of the Russian ambassador by saying that they would have no impact on Denmark's decision and that her country would not allow Russia to intimidate them.
The Ukrainian armed forces counteroffensive has begun. Donbass roars with vengeance. The frontline cauldron is destroying the enemy. In the Sumy region, the occupiers are fleeing and refusing to storm. Our soldiers are methodically driving them out of their positions. The strike on the command in Donetsk is a triumph for the Ukrainian armed forces and the beginning of the enemy's collapse. Stunning details coming up in just a moment.
The Ukrainian armed forces are changing their tactics. This is being reported by a number of military analysts. Among them is also the former head of foreign intelligence, Mykola Malomoush. According to him, thanks to the fact that our troops have moved out of a purely defensive stance and started using flanking attacks, a number of settlements along the entire front line have already been liberated.
We have advanced here. We have models of action that allow us to both defend specific positions, launch counterattacks, and recapture settlements. Yes, the enemy is advancing in certain areas, but we are already systematically recapturing several villages or settlements in this sector almost every week. We are launching counterattacks from the flank. It is very important that the new tactics allow us to act unexpectedly for the enemy. He cannot concentrate a strike group or establish a defensive line. He is not at all used to defending systematically. Therefore, the new elements in our operations allow us to achieve, for now, sectoral tactical results, but they are already significant.
First of all, it is worth noting the advance of the armed forces of Ukraine in the Donetsk region, which remains the main direction of the Russian offensive. Despite the enemy grouping of over 100,000, analysts note that the defense forces managed to liberate a settlement there and at the same time organize 2 encirclements of enemy units.
Ukrainian troops chose the village of Pankivka in the Donetsk region, further squeezing the remnants of the Dobropilya salient. According to preliminary data, Russian soldiers to the north are already encircled. 2 rings of encirclement have formed there, with the infantry inside being supplied by drones from the air.
The unsuccessful attempts to help their units escape from these pockets played into the hands of our fighters, who are fighting on the hottest front of recent months near Krovsky. After all, today Russia is forced to disperse its forces and significantly reduce the pressure on the northern outskirts of the city.
That's why Pokrovsk today, obviously for the Russians, it was target number 1. During this offensive, accordingly, today it has not been taken, just as probably overall we should say the Pokrovsk-Mikhnehirsk agglomeration, which has stalled the enemy's advance. Let me remind you that it is mainly the 51st Army of the Russian Federation fighting here, reinforced by a large number of units, some of which had already come from the Sumy region, then were redeployed to Zaporizhia, but they did not stay there because it was urgently necessary to provide support, and today they are trying to do just that. Thank you. Those units that managed to pull off this flash mob in Dobropilya.
At the same time, another support for our fighters in Pokrovsk the day before came from the Air Force, which successfully attacked the command post in Donetsk. Footage of the Russian headquarters being hit has already spread across the internet.
It's clear that the strikes were not ordinary, especially in this direction. First of all, in Donetsk, they really gathered the headquarters and command of those armies, those units and formations that are actually fighting in the Pokrovsk direction. Accordingly, we understand that by leaving these troops without leadership, it takes time to appoint people to positions, even if only as acting commanders. In any case, this means the chain of command is lost.
Meanwhile, the Ukrainian command emphasizes that the Kremlin itself may soon change its tactics, especially in the battles for Pokrovsk. The small assault groups that tried all summer to capture this stronghold did not achieve the desired result. Therefore, Moscow may abandon its strategic ideas in favor of intensifying conventional meat grinder assaults.
A flanking maneuver, you remember we talked about at least 3 directions. An attempt to bypass, to encircle Pokrovsk, Smirnograd and Kostiantynivka respectively, not even to reach the rear, but to occupy these cities. I think the enemy will not achieve this goal, although today they will try, and this possibility cannot be ruled out. First, to deploy mechanized components, and accordingly they might even attempt a frontal assault.
But there are fewer and fewer Russians willing to attack head-on. The main intelligence directorate reported that the number of deserters in the occupiers' units has increased significantly. At the same time, the Russian command has decided to either execute or torture such soldiers.
He almost fell in love with the sea. Shit, I thought they didn't kill people. Soon, damn it! A missing soldier will join you. But the truth is, he'll be lying there with broken arms and legs as bait, damn it. And the same shit will happen to anyone who abandons their comrades in battle. We'll all get out of here someday, those of us who survive.
Analysts also note significant successes of the Ukrainian armed forces in the Sumy region. After the Russian paratroopers and Marines were withdrawn from here to reinforce the Pokrovsk offensive, the remaining forces simply aren't able to withstand the pressure from the defense forces.
This refers to the act of protecting, safeguarding, or justifying something against attack, challenge, or accusation. It encompasses all measures taken to ensure security and maintain integrity. Not long ago, the Ukrainian village of Kondrativka was liberated in this area, and now it's the turn of the village of Alexievka. The Russians admit that in general they are expected to lose this settlement soon, but they still keep clinging to it. And the Ukrainian military have encircled this village and are preventing the Russians from supplying their fighters.
At the same time, experts believe that similar operations may soon become more frequent, especially in light of recent insider information from the United States. Thus, the Financial Times reports that the United States will send 33,000 AI-powered drones to Ukraine by the end of the year. According to forecasts, these UAVs will be used in so-called swarms and will be able to independently coordinate attacks on Russian positions.
That's all from me for now. This was me, Darina Hatskalo. Even more scorching news from the front in our next episode. In the meantime, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. See you soon.